Most people believe that Montessori is a curriculum, but it is actually a way of life. In today's context, how do you feel this is so relevant? The child has to be emotionally very ready first. When you empower children, when you instill that trust in them, the confidence stems out from there. If you feed a person a fish, you're going to just feed him for a day. But if you teach him the skill of fishing, you're feeding him for life. You do promote also children with learning disability to come to your school, into your classrooms. What does that look like? They are children, after all. They are supposed to be in the same environment as every other child, so that they don't feel that there is really an underlying problem. Yeah. We cannot push the child forward just because the curriculum states. Correct. We have to get down to the child's level. If you had to bust 3 myths, misconceptions that people have of the Montessori, what would those misconceptions be? So the Montessori method is...
In today's episode of Mama Approved, today we're going to talk about the Montessori method, what it is, how it nurtures independence, and how it's relevant today in our education scenario. Founded almost 100 years ago by Dr. Maria Montessori, the Montessori method has been shaping classrooms all across the globe. Today, Indian parents are navigating an extremely complex education scenario. Will this approach fit your goals for education? To guide us through this question and these conversations, we have with us the founder of Casa Vista Montessori, Akshita Salarkha. With 2 decades of experience, she brings a keen understanding of this approach. She's also recently a published author for a children's book. Hi, I'm Sneha Javeri, your fellow mommy friend and the host of Mama Approved, a podcast where I ask all your questions to the best people in the business. Thank you so much, Akshita. This was really, really nice. I'm so glad we've taken the opportunity to sit down and actually talk about this approach, which is so misunderstood. And there are so many misconceptions, and also it's a mystery because there are not too many people doing this approach. So I just want to get into it. If you can tell me what exactly the Montessori method is. So the Montessori method is over 100 years old now. Yeah. And it was invented by a lady called Dr. Maria Montessori. She was an Italian physician. And she studied children through very detailed observations. So she observed children across different age groups. And then she came up with this method, which is obviously scientifically tested now, which is now called popularly known as the Montessori method. So most people believe that Montessori is a curriculum, but it is actually a way of life. So we say that children coming to us here are not just getting prepared for big schools, but they are really getting prepared for a larger concept, which is life. Right. So by that effect, we do lay a lot of emphasis on developing children's life skills here. Okay. So when we say life skills, of course, they are literacy skills. It is about developing the language. It is about numerical skills, but it's more than that. Yeah. It is about learning how to take care of yourself, learning how to take care of the environment that you're in, right? We term this as practical life skills. It's a very integral part of Montessori classrooms, practical life learning. So our children here are typically doing everything on their own from the time they come in. Something as simple as learning to eat on their own. Yeah, is a life skill, which most kids struggle with actually. Absolutely. So we go beyond that, where the children learn to prepare their own snack. They are learning how to open and close their own shoes. They are learning to be independent around the classroom. So a lot of tasks like cleaning up floors, cleaning up surfaces of tables, washing their own hands. Yeah. It all starts at a very early age. And Dr. Maria Montessori not just observed, but believed that children are very, very capable of being independent learners. Yeah. It's a platform that we need to give them for them to be able to explore and believe in themselves. Only then they are able to function independently. So by and large, this method is working towards gearing children towards a skill development program. Okay. Right? So I'll sum it up in one line where it's popularly said that, if you teach, if you feed a person a fish, you're going to just feed him for a day. But if you teach him the skill of fishing, you're feeding him for life. Right.
And that's exactly what we do here.
Okay.
We're empowering children with basic life skills.
Yeah.
And once they acquire them, they are really ready for the world outside. And that's what Montessori is about.
So basically, it lays a lot of emphasis on independence.
Yes.
In today's context, how do you feel this is so relevant? Independence is so relevant.
Yes.
And how do you feel like the Montessori approach nurtures that and prepares them for different approaches of education? Because the Montessori kind of ends, at least in India, it ends at a certain point. It ends at preschool or nursery or whatever.
Right.
And then they move on to higher grades of education, which is your IGCSE and your ICSE and all of that, or your IB or whatever. So how does nurturing this independence also translate in their academic growth? And how do you prepare children for those eventualities for the future?
Sure. So as we spoke about gearing children for life skills, right? So Montessori is all about independence in the classroom. So if you see our children in the classroom, you'll see simple activities such as pouring from one jug to the other. So when you typically see a child do so, you will probably just term it as a pouring activity. But there's more deeper learning than this.
Yeah.
The child is actually using his mathematical mind and he's pouring into 3 glasses. There's some sort of a concept of division.
Right.
When he's folding the napkins into halves or quarters, there's a concept of fractions.
Right.
So there's a lot of indirect preparation that is done for further areas of learning, be it math, be it language. Right. So Montessori, by and large, when we're giving them this opportunity to function independently, they are developing a sense of responsibility, something that they're going to carry forward into their real life, into bigger schools.
Right.
So when we focus on a practical life skills that I spoke about, it takes care of a lot of academic development as well.
Yeah.
Right. So like the examples I gave you, another one would be choosing an orange.
Yeah.
This is a preparation for the writing hand because there's a lot of wrist agility required when a child is choosing an orange.
Right.
It is actually a practical life activity where a child is just learning how to prepare a snack for himself. But in the long run, he's learning how to hold the pencil grip and write.
Right.
So a lot of practical life activities aid towards the development of other areas such as fine motor skills, gross motor skills, your reading, writing skills. They are all stemming somewhere. They're all foundationally stemming out of the practical life.
Right.
So, and of course, as the children step into, the nursery and the junior KG program, we don't actually bifurcate or term it as nursery, junior KG. We call it as a pre-primary program. We are kind of working towards formal mathematics. We are getting them linguistically ready. So there is a lot of reading and writing actually done in Montessori schools.
So how would you how would this approach be different from what is done, say, in a traditional method when it comes to literacy and math?
So conceptually, it doesn't differ. If you're going to be learning, let's say, addition in grade 1, you will be learning addition in Montessori here as well in senior KG in grade 1.
Yeah.
So conceptually, it remains the same.
Yeah.
The only difference is that Dr. Maria Montessori has designed specific learning aids,
right,
that kind of break down a concept. So stage-wise, a child is able to understand because he's dealing with a lot of materials, hands-on materials, that kind of make the learning very consolidated in the child's mind.
Yeah.
So the conceptual learning is the same in both the spaces. Again, as I said, skill-wise, they are ready. Academic-wise, they are ready. So they are definitely ready for big school education. It isn't that we're having any sort of a lax here where children are not ready for big schools. We're pretty much gearing them for big schools. As I mentioned at the start, that we're getting them life ready. So we are doing everything it takes for the child to be able to adapt into the big school. And we're just talking here, we just spoke about skills and activities, but Montessori lays a lot of emphasis on social skill development.
Yeah.
Which is again really important.
That was actually my next question.
Yeah. As well as when we talk about social skills, it's more than just sharing materials, taking turns. The child has to be emotionally very ready first, right? And that emotional security is something that does stem out very early on in age. So when you empower children, when you instill that trust in them, when you believe that I believe in you, that you're able to do things independently, I'm giving you a platform to function independently. The confidence stems out from there.
Right.
And that's what makes the children secure, they are able to feel that I'm enough. And that is something that is very, very essential, as a part of a holistic development program.
Right.
And that's what we are gearing children for.
And I mean, how do you manage to have different, because I do know that Montessori classrooms have varied age groups.
Yes.
The kids are not all of the same age, how they are normally in a traditional classroom. So first of all, why? Second of all, how does the teacher or do the teachers manage varied age groups in a classroom when maybe you are teaching one concept, for
Right.
example? Then how does it work?
So just to clarify this, first things first, yes, we do follow mixed age group setup. So children in the toddler community are aged anywhere between 1.5 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And the pre-primary is aged anywhere between 3 to 6 years. Yeah, it's like a 3 year, difference, age group difference. Now, how this typically works is that this is again time tested.
Yeah.
And what we've observed is that the younger children find a lot of comfort in the older children in the classroom.
Okay.
So rather than the adults, so it's easy for them to approach the older children for help versus the adult. Again, this is scientifically observed and tested.
Okay.
So what happens is that when they see the older children in the class, they already have very well acquired skills.
Yeah.
Very good established language, I would say.
Yeah.
A great sense of order in the classroom. So the younger ones are kind of adapting that and setting it taking it as like a role model.
Oh, nice.
Say we'd like to be like them, just like how they'd like to role model us
Or
in
a
our
sibling.
homes, or a sibling in the home environment, right? So this is setting like a benchmark that's not set by us, but rather it's very implicit. The
Yeah.
children set it for themselves.
Correct.
So in real life learning, we've seen that, a child suddenly starts taking up a task that may not have been taught to him.
Yeah.
But he's observed it for so many times, in the classroom, the older child working with those materials. So he just absorbs that concept very naturally.
Right.
Similarly, language development accelerates because when you have a lot of children who are talking fluently in complete statements versus the same age group where everybody has the same level of language, the language development accelerates.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at it from the elder children's perspective, they build a lot of leadership skills.
Right.
So they are consolidating the foundation that's already laid for them. So when you're teaching, they say, right, that when you actually get down to teaching a child or anybody else, you kind of consolidate your own learnings. So that's what happens. Obviously, they feel empowered and responsible.
Yeah.
And this makes them very confident.
And also, I would believe a lot of empathy as well, right?
Yes.
Because they're helping younger kids. So this quality becomes very inherent
Absolutely.
to who they are as people, which I think in today's times is more important than any academics and any amount of learning that the children do.
Absolutely.
Empathy being one of the most important
Absolutely.
attributes.
A lot of values get imbibed
Right.
very implicitly, as I said, that we learn respect, tolerance, empathy.
Yeah.
We learn
Yeah.
to be gentle, caring towards the younger ones.
Yeah.
And I guess when Dr. Maria Montessori put this in her practical approach, she kind of mirrored a real life setting. So even if you look at our families or our communities or our work environments, we're not always with people of the same age groups.
Yeah.
And that's what we practice here.
Yeah.
So it's again a life skill.
It's a life
To
skill.
learn to kind of socialize with people of different or varied age groups.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the setting that has been working for such a long time.
Yeah.
Right. And coming to a question where, we do have parents who are very concerned about how do you monitor progress then? So in this kind of a space, learning is very individualized.
Yeah.
You will never see everyone doing the same thing at the same time. So what a typical day or a classroom would look like is when we receive children, we have older ones even kind of greeting the children at the doorstep. They receive the younger ones. The children know exactly where to remove their shoes and put their bags because mostly everybody is functioning very independently.
Correct.
Once that is done, they make independent work choices. So we lay out materials in the environment which are age appropriate, which are developmentally, appropriate. Uh, that have been already presented to the children, so they know exactly how they're supposed to use those materials, and they make independent choices. So they move around the classroom and they decide that would I want to count first, or should I finish my writing work first?
Yeah.
Should I clean up plant first, or should I see a table that's dirty? Should I go and wash that up first? Or a younger child needs help. Maybe I spend some time working with a younger child. So a lot of independent choices are made on a day-to-day basis. And at the same time, the learning is very individualized. So you will see that no two children are doing exactly the same thing at the same time, unless they've chosen to work in a group. Right. So even when we receive twins, there can be a twin, let's take an example of a 3-year-old. There can be a 3-year-old twin who's counting numbers 1 to 10, because that's where he or she is at his stage of development in math. You will see another twin who's counting numbers 1 to 50.
But does the Montessori teach numbers like this, 1 to 10?
So it's very gradual, it's very progressive. We don't teach them, we call them as presentations or demonstrations, right? So we have certain learning aids that get the children to naturally come to the number counting.
Okay.
So before the child actually gets to counting numbers 1 to 10, there's a lot of preliminary work that is done where the child first learns how to build innate order, which comes from practical life work again. How to set up things in an order, how to function in an order. Because
So
math is all about order.
And basically the concept of math.
Exactly.
Not the theory of math.
Not the theory of math. So they come to those concepts very gradually and very organically.
Right.
Because I think a lot of foundational work is done in the toddler community before they move on to the pre-primary, where they will be more exposed to the concepts.
Yeah.
So by that effect, when we do see that learning is differentiated in classrooms, we have a very small teacher-child ratio for us to be able to monitor each child's progress, because it's very, very different.
Correct.
So although we do group the children as per their abilities or age groups, but you will still see that a lot of children till the age of 6 years need a lot of individual attention and a lot of individual workspace to learn.
Yeah.
Not so much in groups.
Yeah.
They are ready for groups after the age of 3.5,
Yeah.
where we will provide them with opportunities, learning opportunities where we're grouping them.
And what about when we were chatting, you said that your school is a very inclusive school.
Yes.
And you do promote also children with learning disability to come to your school, into your classrooms. What does that look like?
So the way Dr. Mario Montessori has designed this entire method, it is designed from the start to be an inclusive school. Right. So when we say inclusive, we literally do mean that we do take children from different neurodivergent backgrounds, and they do have, some of them do come to us with learning challenges.
Yeah.
And they're children, after all, they are supposed to be in the same environment as every other child, so that they don't feel that there is really an underlying problem.
Yeah.
We don't even believe in providing like a one-on-one shadow teacher for children, simply because our ethos is to working towards independence. So when we say inclusive, we make the child feel a part of our community. You will see that we do have a group of children who have special learning needs. But the way the Montessori method is curated or designed, it caters to these specific children in specific ways.
Yeah.
So one material or one set of material can be used in multiple ways that caters to their learning needs. So our material is also very sensorial.
Yeah.
In its elements, where a lot of touch, feel, taste is included in the learning process.
Yeah.
So all these are basic learning needs.
Yeah.
Whether you are, neurodivergent or you're not.
Yeah.
These are basic learning needs.
Yeah.
So they take care of, all sorts of children coming from all sorts of backgrounds.
And what about so basically, when we, in a traditional class, the progression, like from when the child comes in at say 2, right? The child will come in at 2, 2.5, whatever.
So the progression from 2.5 till 4.5 in a traditional classroom, every year you have marked off a certain curriculum. Yes, we call it standardized. So what is standardized curriculum? So most traditional schools practice something called as standardized curriculum, which means learning is also standardized. Everybody's doing the same thing. A lot of us did come from schools as such, where everyone got exactly the same work in math, language, other areas of learning. But we don't function like this in a Montessori setting. We call it as differentiation. So learning is not standardized and nor are assessments, nor is the growth of the child. So we are monitoring children from where they started off with us to where they have reached, right? Rather than a fixed curriculum. So we do have a curriculum framework. Yeah. Montessori has a framework. Yeah. There's a lot of flexibility within that curriculum, which means that if a child is not ready for a certain concept or is not ready with a certain set of skills, we cannot push the child forward just because the curriculum states so. Correct. We have to get down to the child's level. We have to give the child ample of time to work to come to that level at a certain age. So everyone eventually learns, the reading, writing. We spoke about that a while back. Yeah. But it has to be child-centric. When we say child-centric, this environment is at the children's pace. Yeah. And that does create a lot of anxiety amongst adults to say that, how can you work at the
Because
child's
I think
pace?
we're so used to, for our own selves, right? We're so used to setting some unrealistic standards and then meeting them and then falling short of them and then getting anxiety.
Absolutely.
So this is actually very refreshing. And if we can learn from this, even from our own lives, that would be nice. So when we do, the Montessori classrooms come across as very minimalistic and very, very intentionally minimalistic. Yes. As opposed to traditional classrooms or classrooms maybe of a different kind of approach. Is this intentional? Is this prescribed by your approach, or is it just this something that all Montessoris kind of evolve into?
Right. So it is prescribed in our approach.
And why is that?
The reason being that, so what is minimalistic is that we try not to put too much of colors on our walls, on our floors. So children, if you see, right from birth till the age of 6 years, have developing concentration levels, right? It's changing with changing time. When we receive a toddler at 1.5 years, they have very short concentration spans. Yes. And we want to make sure that their concentration lies in the work, in the activities, and it's not fragmented around other things. So a child can get very easily distracted. Yeah. If there's a lot of color, there are cartoon characters on the walls, and this can take them away from the main focus. So if you look at our classrooms, you will see that all the color, all the design, all the shapes, and everything that intrigues a human mind is all inbuilt in our materials, so that it's inviting for the child, and he approaches those materials. He finds them inviting in the classrooms, and that is the whole point. Right. And we also, if you see our classrooms, you see that everything's child size, right from the furniture to the way we lay out things in baskets and trays, so that the child is able to function independently. So this theory is very, very much very intentional, and I think you would see it in most of the Montessori schools.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because Montessori classes are actually very, very different compared to other classrooms are like a burst of color and like there's a lot going on.
Right.
But this actually sounds quite logical, and I guess for kids, the less you have, the more focus they can
absolutely
do. But if you had to bust 3 myths, misconceptions that people have of the Montessori, because I'm sure lots of parents come in with lots of different kind of misconceptions.
Yes.
And you spend most of your day correcting those misconceptions. Yes. What would those misconceptions be?
Yeah, sure. So the very first one is you giving children a lot of freedom. So there must be so much of chaos.
But if you walk in, no chaos.
There is no chaos.
I walked into your classroom.
So they're more concentrated. So the more freedom you give the child, The more he feels empowered,
and do you feel that the calmer they are, the more freedom
of
they
course,
get?
because they are making their own independent work choices for the day, right? We're not forcing. It's not adult driven.
Right.
It's not set in a timetable format. So when the child chooses, he says, "Oh, I think I'm going to finish probably counting my numbers first." Chances are so high that he's going to do it with utmost concentration and joy because he's chosen it for himself. So although we give them a lot of independence and a lot of freedom in the classroom to choose their own activities, it comes with something called as limits.
Yeah.
So in layman's terms, they're called boundaries.
Right.
So the freedom is there, but it comes with limits. And the limitations are inbuilt in the system. So even if you are watering a plant or you're painting or you're reading a book or you're working with math or language, all these are developmental activities. So it's not like the child is piling away his time or is not using his time constructively, right? It's still aiding towards development.
Yeah.
So those are the limits we set.
Okay.
Right? So that's one thing that is most commonly believed. The other thing I think that frightens most parents about this method is that it's slow paced. It's a fear because obviously we are living in a fast paced world.
Yeah.
And people want to see a lot of structure. We don't have any timetables in our classroom. So then how do you structure? How do you know what is going on?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what typically happens is that the slower you go, the more clarity you have, the more deeper the learning is. Right? With all these, with this technological world, advancing world, we do see that everyone's in a fast-paced life, But with children, it doesn't really work. You really need to slow down.
You need to slow down.
As a parent also, I've found this as one of the biggest challenges. So children do show us very clearly what their learning needs are or what their needs are. And only if you're able to slow down do you form connection with with the children in your class.
Right.
Without connection, you're not going to be able to understand where they are at their learning stages. So you're not going to be able to move them forward successfully.
Correct.
And that is something we practice here.
Yeah.
We do work very slowly.
Yeah.
So a child can take 15 minutes to complete a task or 45 minutes. We do not intervene unless we feel that there's a need.
Right.
So we allow them to work at their own pace.
Yeah.
Also, children very young, we spoke about how they're still developing the concentration.
Yeah.
So imagine a child has just acquired a skill, he's stringing beats, and he's just got the knack of stringing the first beat, and the teacher says, "Back up."
Yeah.
Feels so defeated.
Yeah.
Right? Therefore, it's important to slow down, observe before intervention. And that's what our forte is, and that's what we do. We are allowing children to make mistakes.
Yeah.
We're allowing them to work at a pace much, much slower than the outside.
Right.
And of course, I think the third most thing that we hear all the time is that Montessori is only about life skills. Then our children really getting ready for big schools. But that's not the truth. We've already spoken about how life skills in itself are gearing children for life, right? Like I give an example of juicing an orange. Like you can't expect a child to hold a pencil if he doesn't have the grip.
Yeah.
And those grips are not formulated just like that.
Yeah.
So Dr. Maria Montessori, quoted this in a very beautiful way, where she said, what the hand does, the mind remembers. So unless you don't give them enough hands-on experiences, you're not actually formulating the intellect you want to form for your child.
Now that you say that, while we were growing up, if you remember and scan your classroom, there were so many kids who were technically not in the first 10 hierarchy of, academics.
Absolutely.
Because I think the way that we were being taught was not this. It was not hands-on.
Right.
It was very, very rote and very, very how much you can remember.
Absolutely.
But maybe those 10 kids were phenomenal at remembering. And there were 10 other kids who were phenomenal at something like this. If they had the opportunity to maybe work with their hands, their mind possibly would have been able to remember.
Yes. So there's a lot of science behind this.
Yeah.
Now, there are theories by Dr. Howard Gardner, and he's written an entire theory on multiple intelligences.
Yeah.
So, he's encapsulated that in a short way to say that we all have 8 or 9 kinds of intelligences, and every one of us is higher in one form of intelligence over the other, be it math, be it language. Somebody could be nature smart.
Yes.
Somebody could be people smart.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're able to understand what
your
your
smart
classroom
is.
really requires,
Yeah.
it's easier to impart learning the way you want to.
Sure.
So also if just all of us had to get tested on multiple intelligences, most of us are going to be kinesthetic learners, learning by doing, and visual learners.
Correct.
We all are going to score the highest on these 2 areas.
Okay.
So I'm not able to kind of comprehend how the schools back then taught us without allowing us to experience things by really getting hands-on experiences.
Yeah.
Or even providing us with enough visual experiences. Everything was mainly auditory.
Right.
And that would come somewhere last on the list.
Yeah.
So it's very important to incorporate a lot of different kind of learning strategies into your classroom.
Right. And if you had to give one snippet of advice to that mother or that parent who's overwhelmed about making that school choice,
Right.
what would that snippet of advice be?
So I won't, as an educator, I won't say that there's any right or wrong method or a right or wrong school, but I think it's what resonates with who you are as a parent. Right. So parents have to make an informed choice. The only way to do that is to walk into schools, to read about their missions, their visions, to see if your vision aligns with a school's mission and vision. It's so important, right?
Yeah.
So even here in Montessori, it's very important for us to have like-minded parents.
Yeah.
Because if parents are expecting something else and we're working at our own pace, there's a huge clash.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of disappointment.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's really important for parents to understand as a family what are their expectations from an education system and then plan backwards and forward.
Yeah.
So that's my advice to most of the parents.
Thank you so much, Akshita. This was fabulous, extremely enlightening, and I have really learned a lot in these 30 minutes.
Thank you so much for having me a part of this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this conversation actually brought some value to your life. For more content like this, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel.